Thanks to his beard.
That's a serious beard you got going on. I mean, you're heading toward Duck Dynasty, but well groomed. That's a good look. If I ever did that, that's the look I would go for.
The other guy is a guy who takes no prisoners when it comes to sports.
Let's stomp these dudes.
Together, they bring you the best in Oklahoma State sports talk and opinions on sports from around the country.
That's right. Listen up. Hey, listen up. You.
It's Jason Elmquist.
Today, I'm a mild-mannered reporter for the newspaper.
And Patrick Wheeler.
I'm a very dangerous man.
This is the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network.
That's what I'm talking about, sport.
You ain't never heard nothing like this. Let me work, show me where the mic is. I'm on stage, black shirt, and my Timbs, you know how I do it. I ain't playing with you, I've been grinding. Anybody trying to sleep on me, better do something with your eyelids. I hear a lot of whining, but I don't hear a lot of rhyming. Everybody got opinions.
Welcome into the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Tuesday afternoon. Patrick Wheeler and Jason Elmquist with you. A lot of good stuff to get to today on this Tuesday version of the Afternoon Sports Drive. 105.1 Triple Play Sports Radio app. Call in at 533-1051, 533-1020. As we look at plenty that was just actually released in terms of more news moving forward to the big topic, which remains, when will we get sports and how will it return? Well, the White House just held a meeting a few hours ago with basically representatives from every sports league, including college sports, and representing the College Football Playoff Committee. There was Bob Bowlesby, Big 12 commissioner, represents and has this to say about the call he was on, the meeting. He said, quote, "They just told us what they knew, told us they were anxious to help. We learned that there were likely going to be a lot more tests available, both the antibody tests and point of contact tests, which is a good thing for all the pro guys and the colleges. They said the number of tests was going to go up dramatically in the coming months. They thought we were going to have the necessary tests to do what we needed to do." He said there are still too many unknowns to determine when the season might start, but getting the best information from the most authoritative source is always a good thing. So that's encouraging there. I'll bring Jason in now with that first part, him mentioning, hey, they said that we're going to have more tests. That's the big part, because we had said that, and baseball had even said, they weren't planning on starting until more tests were A, available, and B, not going to be taken away from the public. And it looks like, again, this is another step forward for every sports league. If they can find a way to get started involving testing, involving not taking away from the public, then that almost is like the launching point, I think, for finding a way to officially start something.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we've been discussing here, and I think that was the big thing when we heard about the possibility of MLB playing in Arizona and stuff. Their biggest thing was they'd have to have abilities to test the athletes during the season. That way, if somebody came down with something, you can catch it quickly, see who they were in contact with, get them tested, stuff like that. So, I mean, because that's the thing is ultimately, we talked about it obviously with Tom of the kind of liability that universities are in, but I mean these franchises are as well. I mean, because if you really think about it, these guys are union workers and they can have some say in the conditions that they're working in. But I'm sure that as much as some of those wives who say, well, you need to go get your money because we got to pay the bills, they're also probably concerned about the health of those athletes of going out there if there was no way to test them properly.
And we'll get to Major League Baseball's. They've been tossing around plenty of different ideas in terms of how they plan on starting. And another one came afloat today as well. We'll talk about that later. Let's look at more of what we kind of talked about at the end of the show, because it became news yesterday towards the end of the 6-week period being suggested for college football there. We kind of mentioned that towards the end yesterday of how they said that a recommendation would be, 6 weeks is where you would need in terms of practicing, training, and the rest of that before the season starts. And we've seen college football voices come out and say that they would love to have 8 weeks. 6 weeks is doable, and then 4 weeks they said you're kind of pushing it, but still doable. And we had even mentioned 4 weeks we thought could be something that they could get it done if needed to be that. But 6 weeks kind of is right in the middle there, and seems like. And then the good news is they're only a step away from getting approval from the actual coronavirus panel that the NCAA has formed to actually get that 6 weeks implemented if they are able to start up at some point.
And again, I know it's a different sport, but we didn't get to it last week. But Chris Paul, I mean, because he said 2 weeks, wasn't enough for the NBA. And again, a different sport and whatnot. But I mean, you're asking. For 6 weeks for football, and you're asking a third. You think NBA players only need a third of that? Again, and they're in similar situations. Some of them may have access to gyms and personal training equipment, but not again. Some of these. Sixth and seventh man on the bench probably don't have the means and the money to get that access. So, again, I know some people criticize Chris Paul, but I think it's fair that in my mind it's if I'm a commissioner of a league or if I'm a coach or whatever, I'm getting input from my players because they know their bodies better than anybody else does. And so if Chris Paul, who's been in the league this long, knows that he needs more than 2 weeks, then I'm going to agree with him. And again, we've heard from guys like Mike Gundy, Lincoln Riley, who've said if we get started in August and we're given a month, we'll have them prepared. I mean, that's their job to do. So again, 6 weeks gives you a little extra time than just a 4 week period that a lot of people were kind of under the assumption. But again, like we mentioned at the end of yesterday's show when this kind of first came up, is when that 6 week period starts is going to be the big catalyst of when the season starts and when how you affect the games scheduled right now.
And again, Oklahoma State scheduled to open the season September 3rd against Oregon State here at home. They have I think it's 3 home games too to start off the schedule. So something that they obviously would not want to have pushed back. And if can be avoided, that's obviously the best route that could possibly happen for college football. It's good to see, again, another meeting of everyone coming together. And I said it a bunch of times, but I'll say it again. I love how even at a national level, the White House is recognizing how important sports are to launching things back. And it's just the truth. Interesting you bring up the NBA because let's look at that for a minute. We talked about at one point that they had announced May 1st was when they were going to reevaluate.
Yep.
That was kind of their part where they thought maybe they could allow some practice facilities to open as well. And the NBA even said, hey, yeah, we're still going to do that. Then they got some, I don't know if you call it backlash, but basically some disagreement from the Atlanta Hawks. In Georgia was one of the first states to actually start reopening. Yeah. And the Atlanta Hawks said, well, we don't care what the NBA says. We're not going to do it until we get a more all clear type situation.
Well, and that's I haven't looked into it, but I know Georgia was one of the first ones that were supposed to start opening. So I assumed that unless it's a case where their facility doesn't fall under the first wave of businesses being able to reopen, and then I understand the NBA should have been thinking that in regards to that. But maybe it's a case kind of like we've heard from Bowlesby and stuff like that, where the Hawks have been in communication with medical people in the Atlanta area, and while the state is starting to reopen, the medical people say, hey, maybe you guys can should wait an extra week, and that's where the approach they're taking. I haven't read too much into it yet to know if that's the approach that they're coming from.
So basically their GM Travis Schlink said, look, we're going to wait and see what happens here in the entire state of Georgia over the next couple of weeks, and if there's a positive response, they'll start slowly opening up, which I get that. But I also believe, like, at this point in time, too, that it's doable, especially when they've already put in the implements of, hey, the NBA has said you guys can come back to these practice facilities. I can't remember the number. There's only supposed to be 4 or 5 in at one area at one time. Everybody has to have a mask on, which is obviously, I think, a huge inconvenience at that point when you're trying to play basketball too. I read something like designated rebounders, because we know NBA teams have designated rebounders for all their shooters, have to have disinfectant on their shoes. They have to have masks on. Just all these regulations.
I'm assuming
too.
Probably wearing gloves as well.
Yeah, gloves. That's the other one. Yeah, so all of that is being involved as well. And the Hawks said, no, we're not going to do that. And that basically forced the NBA. They said, fine, we'll push it back another week. So now we're looking at May 8th.
And see, that's part of the interesting thing, though, is, I mean, if you're implementing those rules, Well, do the when you're Atlanta, you're the Falcons, and you're in a state that's trying to reopen, and obviously has a pretty big population and been a hotspot of sorts for some of this. You're asking them to take away personal protective equipment from the people, the frontline people who possibly need it. So I can understand from that standpoint why you, if you're an organization, especially considering you probably have most like the Thunder have a great rapport, great relationship with OU Medical that's right near downtown, because of a lot of, if somebody gets injured, that's likely where they're going to go get their surgery. So I understand if that's the case as well. I mean, if you know that there's a shortage of things that the NBA is mandating you have in place in your state, I think it's fair to say, hey, we can't sacrifice just to get our guys back in the gym based on these rules right now.
I think the whole having to have a mask on in the practice facilities and all that is a little stretched. I mean, I know you're trying to be extremely cautious as much as you can here too, but the NBA, this pushing it back even further just kind of furthers my point of it's going to be hard for me to see them starting back up. Now, other sports look like they'll be able to do that in some form or fashion, major sports and college as well. But the NBA, I don't know, it's getting pretty close to having to call it yes or no.
Right. Well, because I mean, technically their playoffs were supposed to have already started several weeks ago.
Yeah.
And your finals are about a month and a half away from being when they're normally set. And then again, I mean, at what point do you say, do we go with a regular playoff situation? Do we shorten it, or do we sacrifice the potential of next year's season as well by making these decisions? So, again, I think we've both in the agreement over the past couple years or past couple weeks is the fact that I think the NBA, of all the pro sports teams, they're the ones that are going to be hit the most, and probably are going to have to just call the season off, kind of like what we saw with at the college level. I mean, I don't. Unless they're going to have two teams from each conference, just go straight into your conference finals. Maybe just do a 5-game conference finals and then a championship. I mean, but again, then you'd also almost have to have an asterisk for the champions this year, because it's like, well, you only had to play. You didn't have to play a normal situation, a full season and whatnot. And again, as we found out, two playoff series is, what used to be the case, but that was also before you had 8-team playoffs.
And every series wasn't 7 games.
Right.
You have to remember that too. Yeah, the NBA, it's not looking real great still. I would have to, if I were betting, I would say that it's not going to happen. But everything else I think is still on track. By the way, we just passed what would have been the first month in the Major League Baseball season. That's kind of hard to believe probably, but the opening day was scheduled at March 26th. Here we are sitting at April 28th. It's been that long already. Now let's look at something real quick before we go to our first break about your alma mater. Kansas AD Jeff Long, Les Miles, the football coach, and Bill Self, all taking 10% pay cuts for the next 6 months from their salaries, and that rounds up roughly to saving the university $500,000. So you see coaches, $500,000 from 3 salaries right there out of the whole school
over just a six month
6
period.
months. Yeah. I don't know. Does that show you on a bigger scale there? I mean, what all can actually happen if everyone got on the same page? Like, for instance, these 3 right here. I mean, look what they're saving for a university that needs it right now.
Right. Well, and that makes you realize how much, like the Iowa State or the Big 12 Conference, when they've said that they are taking 10% pay cuts across the board, I think you're seeing those entities are going to have saved even more. But at the same time, I find it fascinating and interesting, and to me, I think is respectful, is the fact that it's your 3 big money makers who are making the cut. You're not necessarily saying those minor sports who are only making, $80,000 as a head coach. They're not having to sacrifice right now, because we're going to make sure that the guys who are being paid, the millions right now, are the ones who are, trying to make sure that they help the cause right now. And I think that's admirable. I wouldn't be surprised if we see maybe some other universities take that approach. Because again, when I was looking it up 2 weeks ago at Oklahoma State, there's only two head coaches that make over $1 million right now. And obviously those are your football and basketball coach. And the crazy thing is last year, the defensive coordinator actually was paid more than every head coach at Oklahoma State except for 3.
Yeah. That's pretty crazy
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
Defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
That shows you again. I mean, football reigns as number one.
But that's that's why I think you see some people and arguing the cuts across the board, and because ultimately, 10% is going to be big for Chris Young with what he's making, but it's more going to be almost more impactful in helping the athletic department if it's a Mike Gundy or a Mike Boynton, or obviously your defensive coordinator who's making significantly more than some of your head coaches.
And look, this looks great. I mean, you attach this to your name. That's great PR. A coach saying like Bill Self, about as big a name as you can get in college basketball, saying I'm taking a pay cut.
Yeah.
And now, is it going to drastically affect his financial lifestyle? No, but at the same time, you have to respect a guy that's willing to do that. I mean, he's given up a big part of his salary for quite a while. I mean, half a year. So that's
two coaches who've won national championships and made a lot of money. Were willing to make this sacrifice for the university that they're at. And again, as a KU grad, I know everything that's gone off the court with KU, and a lot of people throwing dirt still on that regard, but. I mean, for my head coach for men's basketball and football to step up, and the AD in a time of crisis for everyone, I think is impactful. Because again, if I were in Lawrence right now, if I was a college student, I look at that and say, okay, they're while it may not look as much, I mean, they're still sacrificing what ultimately they were supposed to be due pay wise.
Hey, to me, it's impressive, and it shows they care. I mean, if you hadn't noticed that yet, which I don't know how you couldn't. They care about their programs in the university, and they showed that pretty empirically. When we come back, another top prospect in college basketball has decided to go to the G League. We'll tell you who. That's next on the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network.
Yeah. Levitating off the blacktop. Used to struggle getting started, now I can't stop. Used to be the quiet kid in the sandbox, now it's hands up every time that your man rocks. They ought to stop me coming in again. You mad? You thought we were synonyms? Too bad, that's the water you're getting in. You're too fat for the sharks that you're swimming in. Where I'm sitting, contenders are looking like fruit spinning around in the blender. Hardly a snack when I'm here looking for dinner. I eat them, delete them, they're barely beginners. Main course is my main sport. Play major, but minor's my main fort. Put a chain around everything I came for. Look, don't touch, sucker, tell them take an IOU. Say they want respect now, thinking they deserve to have it next now. Tell them take an IOU. Believing what they're making up, talking loud but never really.
It's the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Hope everybody's having a fantastic Tuesday afternoon wherever you may be. Listening on 105.1 or the Triple Play Sports Radio app, as I know many of you do. Got questions, got comments, 533-1051, 533-1020. Patrick Wheeler and Jason Elmquist are with you, as always, on this Tuesday afternoon. As we mentioned before, if you're just joining us in our first part, new updates coming in about possibly returning to the sports world, and we'll get to that as well here in just a minute. But first, let's bring in meteorologist Jason Elmquist to discuss a little bit of some updating weather here, which we do have, believe it or not, moving through Oklahoma.
Yeah, and again, you might have heard it during the commercial break. Obviously, warning or severe weather breaking in. Tornado watch currently throughout Oklahoma until 11 p.m. Does not necessarily impact most of our listening area. Obviously, Stillwater in the Payne County area is not listed as a county right now. Logan, Noble, counties around us. The closest one I'm seeing is Pawnee, obviously, and then everything kind of east of Payne is, and between here and Tulsa are currently under watch. That's until 11 p.m. Tonight. I think right now they're from the tweet that I saw from Stillwater Mayor Will Joyce, is the chance of severe weather kind of blowing up around 4 o'clock our time around here. But it looks like they're pretty kind of right now projecting the more serious stuff being just east of us. Maybe we get a little bit of rain, maybe some hail around here, but the more severe stuff ramping up just east of us. But again, as those warnings always say, just be alert. Yep. Be prepared for anything can happen, because as I actually mentioned to one of the Kansas City Star sports reporters over the weekend was talking about he was trying to mow his lawn over the weekend, and he didn't look at the forecast, and it rained that day. And I joked with him. I was like, I've learned in Oklahoma, 0% does not mean 0%. So just because we're not we're not on a tornado watch doesn't mean that something crazy can happen. You never know. So just be aware.
Yes,
there is a chance of some severe weather throughout central, but mostly eastern Oklahoma, up through right now through the National Weather Service. That's 11 p.m.
Yeah, so pretty much all night. Take your precautions and definitely pay attention.
And again, I know I think we've got a decent amount of Tulsa people listening who listen into us. Obviously, big Oklahoma State fan base over there. So if you are listening on the app and whatnot, if you're over there, just be prepared. Tonight could be a rocky one. So just be prepared. Keep aware. And again, if anything does happen around the Stillwater area, we are one of the channels.
That's right. We'll
one
have
of the stations that will keep you updated if anything severe happens in our immediate area.
So we will. In our immediate area, let's get into some more sports. Another prospect, top prospect in college basketball, decides to take a different route. Now, this time it might have been even worse because he had already previously committed to school. That was Daishen Nix, who are already committed to UCLA, and he's a number 1 point guard coming out of high school. Okay,
Go to G League as well.
Go to the G League. Goes to the G League. Number 11 nationally ranked is Daishen Nix. Now, this was after he had already committed. So he had told UCLA, yeah, I'm your guy. UCLA used to be, I mean, maybe not so much recently, but used to be one of the powerhouses, right? Yeah. When you think of college basketball.
Back in the 90s, definitely. Even when Russell Westbrook was there.
Yeah, exactly.
They made a run towards the Elite Eight, Final Four.
They had been good for a long time. And, kind of not as much over the last
10, 15 years.
I'd say 10, yeah, somewhere in that area, not as much. But they land a top prospect here, and they're feeling good. That was one of the top prospects, by the way, again, in a long time that they had landed on this team. So they're preparing for him to be there next year. Gets out of it and says, nope, I saw what Jalen Green did. I saw what Isaiah Todd did. Yeah. They're making big money. Also, they're getting an education if they want. And he described it as this, and this is what's right here is what it is. He described it as, I decided to go to the G League now because I will be one step away from the NBA. I'm basically training right under the NBA to enter the NBA draft and go from there, which is telling me, again, it's another way of saying why, now that I think about it, and maybe waste is a strong word, but to them, maybe waste a year in college when I could be in the G League preparing against better talent.
The one difference is, and again, with him, it may be different because obviously UCLA hasn't been a dominant program, but of late. But I mean, the one glaring difference in my mind is if you're choosing the G League over a Duke or North Carolina or Kansas, where you have coaches who have proven that they can turn you into NBA prospects. Where if you go to the G League, you're not necessarily getting maybe that type of talented coach because let's be honest, there's a reason that they're coaching the G League.
Hey, proven coaches is what you're saying too in college that have done it over and over.
Right. So I can understand if you were originally committed to one of them of sticking around and stuff like that. But again, at UCLA, I honestly don't even know who their coach is anymore and how long he's been there.
I don't either off the top of my head.
That's how bad the program's been of late.
Yeah, I'd have to look.
So I can understand. It's like, okay, it's not like I'm being coached by Krzyzewski or Calipari. Calipari, who's had some great one and done point guards, where I can feel like I can gain an advantage there rather than being being coached by a G League guy who's who's just hasn't been a head coach anywhere but there. That's my thing. Is in my mind the G League coaches I think aren't going to be as good as your elite college coaches.
Well, and it's interesting because I immediately saw maybe an hour or so afterwards, I get an update. North Carolina has Caleb Love coming in, who's a top point guard or top guard, and then the drafted class as well, projected to go big and then early in the rounds in 2021, I believe. And he's coming into Carolina, and he said, no, I'm stuck to Carolina. That's what I want to be. That's where I want to be. That's the team I want to be with, and I want to develop there. So again, that maybe proves your point. You get guys at Duke, Carolina, Kentucky, Kansas, what have you, that are saying, and maybe that's the coaching thing. They're saying, look, these guys are proven. And I mean, for crying out loud, Roy Williams was a part of the whole Michael Jordan situation. Right. Let me come here and develop. Right. And the program speaks for themselves too with those types of guys. Now, at UCLA, again, been as successful as they had been in the past. Yeah. Maybe you get a guy like Nick sticking around for a year.
And I think it's also maybe a difference in mentality. Maybe some of these guys who are going to college want that at least 1 year of college of experience of I can be kind of this big man on campus.
Yeah, right.
Where if I go to the G League, I'm just no one's going to know or remember me until the NBA draft comes around next year.
You're just going to have to put yourself in that mindset of imagine if you had in one hand a 6-figure check. And the other hand, 1 year of college basketball, as well as
and I mean, based on the FBI investigation, some of those players were getting 6-figure checks going to college. That's right.
So let me say this legally: a 6-figure check in one hand.
And let's be honest, there's probably some experiences they get in college that they're getting paid for free, and I'm not saying if some 18-year-old gets into a bar and they realize that he's the star of a basketball team, they're probably giving him free alcohol, even though they know he's underage. Again, and I'm not saying it's happened here or it is happening here or anywhere, but it's probably happened somewhere.
So I got to bring up then the argument here, or not even the argument, just kind of the question to throw out. Where's Cade Cunningham's head right now? Because he is still also in the situation, just like Nick's is, where he had already committed, and he could pull out at any time.
Had he signed?
I don't think he signed.
That's the thing. I don't know if
now. I can't remember in basketball. Can you?
Yeah, I don't know if you've signed with the university. If you
take that back
and go play somewhere else. I don't know. I'm honestly not. Obviously, that was something that Tom might know, or he might know someone up at OSU who would have that knowledge.
If a listener knows, for sure, please call in and let us know off the top of your head. But when it comes to sign, if you verbally commit, obviously you can back out of it.
Right.
And I have to look and see what Knicks did exactly.
Yeah, because I know it's technically a binding contract or whatnot, but in obviously players can request out of it if like a coach leaves and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or if they were, but I don't know. I've never heard he signed and then he decommitted, or he got out of it to go play professionally.
Because I do think Cade Cunningham signed. So if he signed.
He signed. Yeah,
so
he signed
if that is the case, he's officially done that. Does he have the ability to, if he wanted to, back out and see, hey, these guys are doing it, let me go? And maybe not. I don't have to look that up again and get the rules on all that for sure. But it is interesting because I don't know. Does this throw out more of and I mentioned it when it happened with Green and Todd, this trend is now obviously starting to unfold even more with all these top prospects, and the G League just looks so enticing. I think it's even more so because it's not just the 6-figure check. It's ultimately everything else that can come from it. Endorsements, all these deals that these guys are going to end up getting. I mean, they're going to sign endorsement deals that are going to be worth a lot of money. The education part is big too. They're saying, look, we're going to throw in an opportunity for you to still go to school if you want. That's important right there. Yeah. So it's almost, in a way, maybe too good to pass up.
That aspect's kind of similar to what baseball does. Because baseball still, they would, if you go, they have that as an option to pay for your schooling and stuff like that. Because I think technically that's kind of what Brandon Whedon had in his contract when he was signed with the Yankees for baseball out of high school, is he had it where they would essentially pay for his college if you washed out or whatever. So, I mean, that's, again, I think that's smart. It's a great incentive. It's just interesting at what point, because it's going to happen eventually. It's just figuring out, I think, all the details, what year we do it, of getting rid of this whole idea of one and done. I think it's going to be you can go straight from high school to the NBA. I think they had discussed it last summer of having an elite group. Like if USA Basketball considers you one of the top 30 kids in your high school class, like you can try out for possibly going to the NBA. Everyone else then has to go to college no matter what. do they take the approach of, like we've said, baseball, where it's like, okay, if you're going pro, go pro, but if you're going college, you got to go for at least 3 years,
which I think is a good system. I mean, I really do. I've said that for a long time. That baseball they have it right, and I know there's a lot of people that agree with that as well. When you look at it in the NBA and in college basketball now, how much does it also push that agenda and that idea to the college level of, hey, we got to start paying these guys, because if not, they'll just go a different way. And if this keeps happening at the level that it is now, and the speed and the consistency now, these are 3 top prospects.
Well, that's my thing, is the name and likeness is, to me, well, a lot of people I think assume football, and maybe you're elite, basically your finalists that went to the Heisman Trophy would benefit from it, but I think it's going to benefit more basketball players. Because that's the thing, and some people argue why they're more recognizable and stuff like that. It's like they don't have a face mask.
Yeah.
They're not wearing a hat.
Isn't that the
you
truth?
You see
though?
their face, and then the fact that you're literally right on top of their playing venue.
Isn't that the truth?
So I mean, it's a case where I think ultimately basketball players will benefit more from that name, image, likeness thing once it passes and stuff like that, to where maybe you can combat that possibility of going pro.
I've always thought that was interesting. Even in the NFL, there's guys that you see the name on the back of the jersey for a team, for instance, maybe not a team you follow that much. If you happen to run across them in public, would you even know who that was? It's really interesting. But yeah, same way with college. How many players can you recognize that's maybe not from Oklahoma State by just their face if they're not a quarterback?
Yeah, well, because that was the thing with on watching the Michael Jordan documentary, is that when they were showing the highlights from some of those games, I'm like, I was having like deja vu moments. I was like, oh, I forgot about, Vlade Divac. And I remembered the reason why I was actually a Jazz fan in the 90s. I mentioned last week, I was like, for some reason it was because Greg Ostertag, which I didn't even see his name. I just saw the back of the bald head. And I'm like, oh, it's Greg Ostertag. That's right. That's why I was a Jazz fan, because he's a KU guy. And like they're recognizable, even if it's someone who's not a big all-star type talent, you still recognize the faces and stuff like that. Again, Steven Adams isn't necessarily an all-star NBA player, but almost everyone outside of the Thunder fan base that watches the NBA probably instantly would recognize him.
Yeah, has a unique look.
Yeah.
Unique look. And if you don't have that, and I don't know how you describe unique look, but if you don't have that, you're forgettable to some people or just not recognizable. But it is interesting. I think college basketball, the NCAA is looking now and they're saying, okay, after one, we were like, all right. Now, after Isaiah Todd, we're like, okay, here we go again. Now, the third one, top prospects, by the way, coming out and saying this, they're like, do we have a problem on our hands here all of a sudden? Who else decides? Yeah. Does Caleb Love end up deciding? Does Cade Cunningham end up deciding? I mean, it could go on and on.
And that's the thing, is the NCAA is at the mercy of the NBA. I mean, it's the NBA rules that they're having to abide by. So, if NBA ultimately changes it and says, ultimately, but they're also in agreement, because I think they also understand, the NBA understands right now, the college basketball is your minor league system. G League isn't really, I mean, let's be honest, G League isn't a minor league system. That's essentially a, you know what, we took a flyer on this guy in the second round. We want to keep him on contract in case he just randomly blows up. But he's never going to. But we'll pay him and ship him over to Tulsa to play.
It's the North Carolina curse, because how many players, and I can name a ton, that are studs at the university, and them in particular, just go and get washed away in the G League.
Oh yeah,
I mean, it's the truth.
Let's be honest. Christian Laettner would have made a living in the G League.
That's why he said, who was the guy that Jordan brought up the other day that used to play in college? Not Doug McDermott. I always get him mixed up with what was the kid's name from Creighton? Well, that was Doug McDermott.
Yeah.
What was the other guy from, I'll have to remember who it was. He brought up a college player name, and I said, oh, he's still out there? But anyways, he was one of those guys that dominates in college basketball, and you see that okay, maybe they're good enough to get drafted, but not really go anywhere. And that's kind of what the G League was. But now when you add in this talent, and it's interesting too, because I was reading with Knicks, he's going to be on a squad or whatever that's actually not going to be playing these games against other G League squads. It's going to be more like exhibition and basically just a whole year of training against. And you can call it better competition. A lot of it is. Now, a lot of it may not be. compared to some college
Well,
players.
if anything, a lot of these guys, and I mentioned it, I think last week, is they're going to be more physical. Their body's going to be more mature,
Yeah.
and that's going to help you better prepare these guys than college will. Because college, you get in there, most of your guys, most of the players you're going to go up against are going to be guys who are still trying to get up to a size that again, a guy like Cam McGriff. You know, his size in college was fine, but it's not a size that's going to translate to the NBA. Where if you went up against someone who's twice that size in the G League for a year, that's going to benefit you, I think, a little bit more because the skill set may be comparable, but the body maturity wise will be more important, and thus allow you to understand what the physicality that's going to take at the NBA level.
And I think one of the big things they're missing out by not getting to see these three in particular that we mentioned not play on a college team, and NBA scouts I'm talking here, is the dynamic they have with teammates, being on the road with these guys, going into hostile situations and performing, being coachable with top college coaches, all of that is involved with scouting a player in the NBA. You know, you read about guys, and it happens in every sport. They not only want to see their potential draft talent, they want to see how they act when they're around their teammates. How they are as a leader. Are they a leader or a follower? How they act towards coaches. How they even act towards fans. All that stuff is important for scouts, and I think you see less of that in the G League than you would if they're playing like these big schools, tough conference schedules, and on the road all the time, and then possibly making run at an NCAA championship.
Yeah.
That's what you miss out on to me right there.
Again, I don't know if this was the guy you were thinking of, but another guy that would be an all-star at the G League right now, Jimmer Fredette.
Could not think of it. That's Jimmer Fredette.
Okay.
I don't know why I couldn't say his name, but yes.
Yeah.
Jimmer Fredette and Doug McDermott were the two that came to mind of guys that dominated in college basketball.
And I went and that's why I thought of him. I didn't know if that was it, but I went and double checked. He did spend at least 1 year in the G League with the Winchester Knicks, but he's currently now in the Chinese Basketball Association.
Yeah, see, isn't that what happens? Is that you get guys too that realize, okay, maybe now it's time to go overseas and extend my talent, and you just never hear from them anymore. You really don't.
Here's the crazy thing: he was actually the MVP of the CBA in 2017.
Really?
Yeah. And then with the Shanghai Sharks,
you know what?
Got an opportunity with the Phoenix Suns, I guess early this season, 2019, and now he's back over in the CBA.
Isn't that crazy the talent level? I mean, Jimmer Fredette goes over to the CBA and dominates.
Yeah, well, LeBron Nash was an All-Star MVP in I think it was the Japanese basketball league.
It's crazy the talent level in the United States when it comes to NBA,
and that's why they just dominate in the sport in the Olympics. Because when you get the best of the best going up even against an all-star team from all these other, it almost feels like they need to take maybe more of like the Ryder Cup approach when it comes to the Olympics for basketball, is the USA All-Star team versus the World All-Star team.
Yeah, I like that.
And then maybe
more
they
of
have
a
chance.
challenge. Yeah, that's definitely something they need to do. When we come back, we'll look at the MLB. They're deciding on a possible new plan to get started as well. We'll tell you what all that entails. We're going to have baseball at some point this season. I'm entirely confident in that. We'll talk about it. That's next. You're on the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network.
You know I love you to death, even if both break down tonight. And you say you hate me, and we go to bed angry. I know everything will be alright. I'll be here waiting. I promise I'm changing. I just need time. I need time. I just need time. I need time. I just need time.
It's the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Jason Elmquist with you. 105.1 Triple Play Sports Radio app, 533-1051, 533-1020. It was bugging me over the break, so I looked it up. Student athlete who signs a national letter of intent. Oh, this one says, student athlete who signs a national letter of intent but decides to attend another college can obviously request a release. That's the only thing I found. Yeah. So I didn't really find anything when it came to going out of it and going to another, like a professional league like the G League. So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how many actually end up following in the footsteps, and how many avoid, if it turns out to be the case later on in the future, of not signing as early. They say, you know what, I'll verbally commit,
Right.
but I'm going to keep this in my back pocket. If they have a G League person in their ear saying, hey, flashing their 6-figure check in their face and whatever, we may see more of it. I mean, I would not be surprised if this becomes more of a trend, that's for sure. Major League Baseball. As I said earlier, we would have been over a month into the season already. Then Tuesday, April 28th, we'd be watching our favorite teams in the middle of different series right now, and it would just be, life would be fine. It'd be okay. Everything would be okay. But no. But Major League Baseball was part of all the organizations that were in the White House meeting today. And one of the new ideas being tossed around for Major League Baseball is to start the season between mid-June and somewhere in July 4th. Between mid-June and July 4th with an 80 to 100 game season. Then they would have an expanded postseason at neutral sites, so the World Series would end up taking place late November or early December.
On a neutral site. Okay.
A neutral site. So that is where...
So you can do it. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they try to get it at Globe Life down in Texas, because obviously good weather, new facility and whatnot. You get the hype up around there. I'm interested though by the expanded. I know that's something they were, that they were talking about wanting to do even before the pandemic. And maybe they're going to decide this. We can do it as a test run because the season's just a test run.
Remember they brought up that whole stupid, ridiculous idea of the reality show.
Where, you're going to get a draft.
You get to draft who you play. Whenever I saw
idiotic.
that was when my respect for Manfred and everything went downhill, because I was like, really? Because he signed off on all those ideas, and I was like, that you're out of your mind. And then everything else followed with the cheating scandals too that made it worse. But this isn't permanent. This isn't set in stone. This is just another idea. We have to remember too. Mayor of Arizona, governor of Arizona, I should say, said that they would be willing to host all 30 teams there, all 32 teams, and could find ways to get their games in Arizona if need be. They talked about expanding it to Florida, to Texas, as Texas plans on reopening the state Friday. And Texas has, they mentioned the Rangers' brand new stadium there. Right. Yeah, like you said, is a retractable roof on that one. Yep. They talked about in Tampa with the Dome. They have a ton of minor league fields in Arizona as well. On top of that, they have all the spring training fields. So all that is possible. The good news coming from all that to me is, they're still going to have baseball in one form or the other. It was interesting to see Ken Rosenthal's and Jeff Passan's arguments, and in their articles they released, I think it was today too, where they said, you know what, we still are confident, but at the same time, we haven't been told anything either. We're just like you guys, have no idea when or where it's going to take place. But what do you think of the 80 to 100 games? Because we knew they weren't going to do 162 games. That looked like it was out of the question.
And again, I'm hopeful that actually leads to a permanent thing, because to me, baseball, you typically watch like the first couple of weeks of the season, because it's the new season start. You watch a few weeks, and then usually by start of June, you're just kind of like, okay, we've got NBA finals. We obviously, right now you got the NBA draft or the NFL draft that would have taken up quite a bit of attention as well. To me, it's basically, I watched the first part, skip basically most of June and July, maybe start picking up late in July when there's obviously the trade deadline starts heating up, and then but it drags on so long, just the regular season alone, and then obviously the postseason takes forever as well, that it's one of those, that and to me NBA as well. I mean, NBA to me is far too long, especially now that you have all these guys that are taking load management, taking days off. It's like, well, okay, if ultimately they're only playing 60 games, or a quarter of their games, or 3/4 of their games, maybe you need to shrink it. Maybe that's what you need to do.
Let me say, I guess, speak for yourself when it comes to skipping out on some of the Major League Baseball season, because that's just, and I get it.
There's a reason it's called the Dog Days of Summer.
It's easier to do as a Royals fan, so I understand that. Because
I'm a Cardinals fan as well.
That's right.
But it is, because that's the thing is, like, when it gets to summer, it's just like, oh, okay, I almost feel like, okay, I want something more than a 3-game series that the large grand scheme of things, is just a drop in the bucket.
Well, and here's the thing, though. Now, with all this that has happened without baseball, and I said it before, I'll never complain about anything.
I'm still going to complain about
I won't.
I'm still going to complain about 162 games.
I'm going to.
Let's be honest. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Can you not figure out the best teams in half of that time? Who the true best teams are?
You could.
Then why do you need to double it?
Again, my response is I've never had any issue with more baseball. I mean, I'm just that type of guy.
Again, it's never going to change because, again, I mean, you've got the big markets that are going to sell out every single game,
and
no matter
they're
what.
going after the younger demographic. We all know the average age they released not too long ago was like 50 something, right? For the average age of baseball fans. Now, there's still that fan base that loves baseball that's younger, like I do. Now, does everyone sit through every game?
Exactly. If you want to get the younger demographic, shorten the games and shorten the season. That's the thing, is like the attention spans of people now are far and few between. I mean, again, there's a reason when you're watching a nightly TV show or something like that, or some drama or whatever, that they don't stick you on one view for more than 10 seconds. Your brain wants to see something different.
And that's been my argument to this, because trying to adapt and cater to this new mindset for younger people that the attention span isn't there shouldn't have to be the MLB's fault and shouldn't have to be their issue. But they do have to do a little bit to cater to a younger demographic. And my solution to that includes a different viewing experience, kind of like you said, which involves more cameras in the dugout, more mic'd up players. I think would be fascinating.
Yeah,
if you
that
had
was cool.
If you had
the minor leagues,
wasn't that great?
The spring
training.
Yeah,
if you had a player mic'd up every game and a different one maybe every inning, how cool
you know
would
what
that
they
be?
ultimately should do, and I don't think it would be that bad. I mean, you'd have to. It may be difficult to police it, but there's eventually technology going to get to a point where you can allow fans to interact with players during a game. Whether it's through Twitter or whatever, and just, obviously, again, you'd want to have someone to be able to police it and not say, hey, by the way, they're throwing strikes to you according to the TV. Oh yeah, well, we can be your Astros for you. Yeah. But being able to have interactions within the game, like if you're at the ballpark and you want, you've been chanting for Mike Trout to, just wave at you, and you tweet out at Mike Trout, and in the game he likes it, or says, hey, thanks for coming and support us. Even if it's not really him, even if it's someone, on their social media staff who does it, but through his Twitter account, I think you're going to get, that's where you get that younger base interested, is because they're used to, I go to a game, unless I'm one of the lucky few actually get in to watch them during batting practice, which it hardly happens anymore. Then you get to have that interaction then. Otherwise, you hardly get an interaction, especially if you're sitting, if your family can only afford the nosebleed sections, you're not getting a baseball. You're not getting to play catch with Mike Trout out in the outfield. But if you go to a game and suddenly, you happen to tweet at him and he liked it during a game, that's going to bring, for kids now, that's going to bring the passion to the game and to these athletes, I think, more so than what they're trying to do now.
Which it kind of reminds me, I remember last year they did a few Facebook broadcasts where they had the game only viewable live on Facebook. I remember that because the Cardinals were one of them at one time. Now, the broadcast was not good. I'll say that to start off with. But it was interesting because you have a live chat going on the entire time with fans, and if you happen to have a player response or something in there, and then maybe they even put that in on your local, for instance, where I was from, Fox Sports Midwest channel, and around here, whatever it is, the channel that's on there with the games. I mean, a different viewing experience, I think, will have to happen at some point because I think
it will for not just MLB.
Oh yeah,
for all sports.
It'll start, I think, with Major League Baseball, just because it's such a slow game. Now, just because I grew up loving baseball, that was my sport. I played it since I could walk, type thing, to where I could sit down for 3 hours at any point and enjoy a baseball game at any time, all the way through. That's not the case for a lot of people, which I completely understand. And baseball is not my favorite sport to watch. I'd rather watch football.
Yeah,
basically any time. But I will say this: playoff baseball, nothing like it to me.
Right.
That atmosphere is insane. Everything about it is through the roof excitement.
And we can get to it faster by having half the amount of regular season games.
Yeah, I think, again, too, you kind of brought it up, and it makes sense. If they get to view this as a little bit of an experimental season and they throw in what happens if we only play this many games and what happens if we have an expanded playoff, all that could result in changes down the road, which ultimately could be good or bad. Who knows? When we come back, I do want to ask you, before we get into football later on, that Major League Baseball announced some changes when it comes to tickets that some people may have had this season. So if you had season tickets or tickets to games that you have not been able to view in person in Major League Baseball stadiums, you might want to listen up. That's next in the afternoon sports drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network.
The creek used to run clear across the tracks to Peabody Cave, and it all turned black. The diamonds we digging don't sparkle or shine, wasted away in a rich man's mind. West Virginia, Kentucky, go. Feed your family, see you soon.
Hour number 2 of the afternoon sports drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network, 105.1 FM. 533-1051, 533-1020 are the numbers to call, and we are streaming live wherever the listeners may be on the Triple Play Sports Radio app. If you don't have it and you're listening on the radio, download it so you never miss our show. On the road at 3 o'clock, turn us on. We'll be here. Jason Elmquist with me. I'm Patrick Wheeler. We were talking about the MLB in the last segment, and I wanted to throw out today they actually did announce Major League Baseball is going to start giving some refunds. Basically, Major League Baseball said refunds are now available. It'll be on a team-per-team basis what they decide to do with refunds for games that were classified, categorized as postponed. Now, they still are, but it's looking more, and this kind of is the final straw to me of basically saying those games aren't going to happen.
Right.
So we're implementing that teams can say, yeah, we'll refund you. I think what a lot of this is going to happen is you're going to get credit for the 2021 season ultimately. Is probably a good way, too, for teams to say, hey, we want you back for a full season next year. Yeah. So if you want to have the option to get credit.
Yeah. Oh, it's smart because I believe, if I remember right, hearing OSU Athletics actually did that with baseball, is you could either get a refund or you can put that money towards your seats for next year. Instead as well. Exactly. So, and it's funny that a university was able to do that promptly while a pro franchise or pro league is taking, would be almost a month into the season.
But I'll defend them by saying that, again, they weren't quite sure if they were going to be able to still get in a full season. I think that's why they kind of wait. Now, maybe they knew. But
again, they're also led by the same guy who's an idiot.
That's true. You take that. But here's the thing. It does bring in this, that we never got to this topic, but it happened a week ago or so, that 2 MLB fans out of New York were suing Major League Baseball because they had not received refunds yet.
Right.
Now, that kind of made me mad just for the fact that, hey, they don't know for sure that they're going to be canceled yet. So just calm down, okay? You were the one, first of all, that made the decision on purchasing tickets.
Well, but I can see, again, I don't know what the whole suit is, but let's say you only bought tickets for the season opener on this day. Well, the game didn't get played. It didn't get pushed back a day. Didn't get pushed back a week. Right now, you're at a month. Like, I can understand why you should be able to, say, hey, if I don't know if maybe they're season ticket holders, then there's maybe a little bit different. But yeah, I mean, if you only had bought tickets for one game and it hasn't been held and there's no idea when it's actually going to be held, I think it's only fair that you should get your money back if you want it.
See, I
think that's my biggest thing is they aren't offering, if you want refunds, you can get it. It's just we're not doing anything.
Until now.
Yeah.
Basically, unless teams decide, which I think teams, what they'll have to do to avoid more of this is say either A, we'll refund you, or B, we'll give you credit towards 2021 season. Now, that should be the thing that goes around and people should have that chance. But when these 2 fans did all this and launched the lawsuit, they said they were denied refunds at the time Now, at the time, they probably were in a way where teams were like, look, we're not going to refund you yet because, again, we don't know. These games could still happen.
Yeah.
And if they do, would you still like the chance to obviously use those tickets and come to the games? That's what kind of got me with these fans, because they're launching this lawsuit, and I'm thinking to myself, look, I know that it's a tough time financially, but you did make the decision to purchase tickets at the time. Now, I know you didn't know you were going to be maybe in this tough a spot financially, but it was your decision, something I think you need to be able to deal with. Now, it's good that they finally come out with it and said, yeah, we're going to be able to refund and all this. It'll be interesting to see how many teams actually say we'll give you money back.
But and that's the thing. I understand the side of them, because again, this is unprecedented times, because it's not like
It is.
It's not in previous times where, okay, something came up, so I can sell it on the secondary market. I can go to StubHub. I can sell it then, that way, and still, maybe not get all my money back, but at least get most of it. I couldn't even get any of my money back in any way, in a time where a lot of, 10% of Americans have lost their jobs. I understand where they're coming from.
I mean, I do too. It was just when it was launched, it seemed like it was a little early just because we hadn't heard official news. Now, had we heard by that time that, these games are for sure not happening.
And that's the funny thing is, I've only heard it with the MLB. I haven't heard, like, what's the NBA done with with the regular season tickets?
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't think playoff tickets had been purchased yet, or could have been purchased yet. Maybe they were, but like all these, the last 2.5 weeks of the regular season, they got, are they holding that up too? Because they're going to try to finish them off. Like, I haven't heard anything when it comes to the NBA tickets either.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I know that a lot of them, the leagues right now are like, this is the last thing we ever needed. It was to have to refund ticket sales out of all things. So that's where they are right now. Let me ask you this. Should Major League Baseball consider starting up, if they get the all go, let's say they get it even at the end of June or so, at that point, or mid-June even, would they consider starting on July 4th? You talk about making it a popular launch right there. Why not? I mean, they play on July 4th usually anyways. You have games, and it's always a fun thing.
Funny enough, not everyone plays on July 4th.
Not everybody.
And I know that personally because my birthday's on July 4th. Mm-hmm. So there have been times I've tried to schedule whether a Royals game, or if I know I'm going to be on vacation during that time, of, hey, I'll go to a game, in that city. And it's not even where they're on the road. It's just they're not even playing, period.
Yeah, some may get the...
It is a Saturday, so
it's a Saturday,
I think you'd have to start on the 3rd.
Yeah.
If you either the 2nd or 3rd, if you did something like that.
You could start a series for teams right there and say Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That would, I think, but even that weekend, wouldn't that be just wildly popular if they came out and said, look, we're going to start the season, and we're going to start on July 4th weekend. Yeah. That's like the launch into summer, and sports maybe too follow after that, for all we know. And so I don't know. I think it would be something they would have to consider, because they said mid-June to July 4, somewhere in there they want to start. If it ends up being July 4th weekend, it could actually end up working out pretty well for Major League Baseball. Let's shift gears over here to the NFL a little bit. The NFL draft was a big-time success. I think it went over very well. So much so that you were showing me a report that came out today about John Lynch, 49ers GM, who said, hey, we liked how this went, and so much so that we're going to reconsider our draft process and might even have some of our guys do more of this virtual style, basically where they're able to be at home more and do a lot of this. And he cited the idea that, hey, they had so much time to prepare. And it showed. I mean, and it makes a good point when you think about these guys that are, years ahead when it comes to scouting some players, but sitting down for all the time they had, literally nothing else to do, and were forced to do this. And success follows in the draft if you can be even more detailed than you ever thought in this situation. Maybe just Lynch bring up a good point here. I mean, do other teams follow that? Yeah,
he mentioned the fact that they're discussing, he and Shanahan, of the coaches, have basically 2 weeks where they just work from home. Where you put, you're watching as I said, you watch your, the players that you're scouting, you put your rankings in and all that stuff, but you do it from home instead of the office.
It's a Lynch forced quarantine.
Yeah. But at the same time, it makes sense because, that's one of the things we talk about, the popularity of seeing, the kids of GMs and coaches and stuff like that, or the dog for Belichick in his spot. Like you got to realize that, hey, these are normal human beings who have lives.
Mhm.
And then, because all we hear is, Andy Reid, he's there from 5 a.m. to midnight. And it's like, I'm sure his wife loved the opportunity of for the past month especially after winning the Super Bowl, of getting to spend more time with him and stuff like that. So, I understood why they did it, but we're also in a time, and I think that's what the NFL is realizing now, and hopefully, even Mike Gundy kind of talked on it when he talked about his players working from home. He's like, technology's at a point where they can work from home. Like I just tell them, hey, we need to be working on this process by now, and they're able to do. Like, we have the technology, so it makes sense for the NFL people to say, okay, we no longer have to mandate you being in the office. We can do Zoom if you need to talk with Andy about this specific player or whatever. Yeah, while you're scouting.
In sports, there's a silver lining to being in this day and age with the technology available, especially when it comes to breaking down film and watching it. It brings up a story I read today too about the Cincinnati front office, where they had their guys looking at not only Joe Burrow, but they had actually told their guys, their QB coaches, and all their scouts and everybody, look, here's what we want you to do. You will break down and watch the entire season from Joe Burrow. I think it was Jordan Love, Tua, and Justin Herbert that I remember. They said, you guys, your job is to watch that entire season of film during this time and break it down. And they did, and they didn't change their mind, obviously, on getting Joe Burrow, but right there is a perfect example of what this provided. So if teams see that and they say, you know what, we had plenty of time and we saw things that we never would have noticed on film. We broke things down from different angles we didn't even know about.
Well, and I think yesterday when we kind of briefly talked about our winners and losers, I think that was a good example of why this can be successful, is because there was only really one or two teams where we look and said, you guys are idiots. Yeah. Everyone else, I think outside of, again, to me, a team, obviously, yours, it was the Pats didn't find their next Tom Brady and stuff, and they picked a kicker before they picked a quarterback. But like you didn't look at them necessarily like the Packers or the Eagles were just like, dude, what are you doing?
And didn't even this time, they didn't really have as much of an excuse as usual. It's not like the pressure was mounting.
Yeah, it's like with the Packers, like you've had all this time to figure out, hey, well, you know what? This is what we need to make our team Super Bowl contenders. And in that time, you thought, we need a quarterback
and a running back
who's going to sit there for the next 3 years. That's what you thought. Like, outside of those, a couple of franchises, again, even like Washington, which again they over the past few years, it seems like they've done everything wrong. Even they came off good. I think in my mind, outside of Green Bay and Philadelphia, everyone had at least a good draft. No one came off to me as, what are you doing? Why would you reach for this player, or why do you need this? Again, New England's going to do whatever they want. They don't care what we think. They don't care what they don't care what their fan base thinks. All they care about is what Bill Belichick and ultimately Robert Kraft think.
And his dog.
Yeah. And so they're going to do, again, Tom Brady could have been still on the team, and they could have then taken the quarterback in the first round. And we would have been like, well, why do you... Belichick's going to do whatever he wants and does not care what's said about it.
With the Packers, I really don't know what the mindset was. Like, I can't even explain. I tried to think about it and put myself in their situation. In my mind,
it's almost it comes off kind of similar to the conversation we had yesterday of how the Pistons reacted at the end of the loss. It feels like there's some type of pettiness between the GM and head coach towards Aaron Rodgers.
It might be.
We don't like this. We don't like this guy's attitude, so we're gonna go find somebody else. Like, he was winning you ball games with no wide receiver.
Yeah, wasn't this draft just like a huge middle finger to Aaron Rodgers almost?
Oh yeah.
I mean, it was like, sorry, screw you, dude. Yeah. We don't care. It's unbelievable how bad they were in this draft. So let's look at these quarterbacks real quick. First of all, Joe Burrow. My question would be, how long before he truly succeeds in the NFL? Because I think it's coming. I mean, I think there's, barring injury, he's going to have success, even with the Cincinnati Bengals. He's good enough to succeed in the NFL, in that division. You talk about a guy that's going up some serious competition all of a sudden that we talked about. The Browns, we can kind of, you can say whatever you want about them, but Lamar Jackson, Big Ben, We know he's nearing the end of his career, but he's still Big Ben. He's coming off an injury. How will he respond? So you throw Joe Burrow in that situation, I think that level of competition raises it even more, and I think he succeeds right away. I really do.
Again, my biggest thing with Burrow is the location.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I don't know what to expect from him. I felt he benefit from the system and obviously the great talent around him. And there's going to be similar talent, but at what level? You had two wide receivers who, a lot of people are projecting are going to be first round talents. You don't necessarily have that in Cincinnati, but my biggest worry for him is you had a proven quarterback last year. You had some talent at wide receiver. You had an established running back, and what'd you do? You finished with the worst record in football. Does bringing in a rookie quarterback necessarily turn that franchise who had Andy Dalton? And again, I'm not a big Andy Dalton fan, but he at least won you ball games before this coach he brought in this time.
And, it's interesting because people talk about, well, they're going to bring in Joe Burrow. Now, we have to remember he might not immediately start for Cincinnati is what some people are saying. And I'm thinking that I don't know about that. There might be a little bit of a battle in the offseason with Andy Dalton, but I don't believe Andy Dalton's going to be the guy when you have Joe Burrow sitting there. It kind of brings up the whole Tua thing, too, in Miami. How long before he becomes the guy? So let's mention Tua real quick, and then let's try to get a weather update as well in here to some of our listeners. Tua in Miami, again, same question. How long before the success comes? And you kind of said that you've kind of thinking what Miami or what some people around that area might think is he may even sit out for a while just to learn the system. And maybe Miami ends up tanking for another year, whatever. But I don't see it that way. I think Tua comes in and necessarily, find success. I don't know about that with the Dolphins, but at least I think he's going to be. It may be like even a Kyler Murray situation last year where he's going to hit some bumps in the road, but ultimately have a pretty good season.
And that's the thing is I kind of have question marks with everyone at the quarterback being drafted because for me at Tua, it's health. I don't know what to expect from this. Him coming off of this injury from Alabama. And that's the worry, and they even kind of mentioned it during the draft is that wasn't his first injury. That was his first major injury, but he had been dealing with injuries throughout his entire college career, and you're going to face that type of talent and maybe even more physical talent at the NFL level. So that would be my biggest concern is if he can stay healthy. I think he. As far as the type of talent you need at quarterback to win in the NFL now, I think he has he's shown the best aspects of any of the quarterbacks, the escapability, being able to tuck it and run for big yards, not just a big bruiser, kind of like what Joe Burrow was when he ran the ball. So I think he has the potential, but I don't know. That's been the biggest worry of guys like that, going back for the past 10, 15 years is if they can withhold, if they take up too many hits. And we've already seen that he couldn't necessarily do that at the college level.
It'll be very interesting. He might be the most eyes besides Joe Burrow might be on Tua, and exactly when and if he gets that starting job.
Because again, this time last year, we were all talking about Tua being the number one overall.
We were, yeah. Exactly.
And it just took Joe Burrow being on, the best team in college football and putting up crazy numbers. Isn't that suddenly he became the number one.
That's what so many people don't realize too, is it was one season that got Joe Burrow where he is.
That's why I'm cautiously optimistic. And again, I know people will say, well, you've been against him because I didn't vote for him. That was also because I did research and discovered that most of his impressive yards in the regular season, because again, what he did in the postseason was amazing, but the Heisman Trophy is a regular season award, and the regular season his highlights came against terrible opponents. Where a guy like, and obviously to me, Chase Young was hands down the best player in college football. In my mind, you can't argue me out of that thought. I will go to my grave thinking that this year Chase Young was the most dominant college football player. But as far as quarterbacks, to me, Justin Fields, he put up better numbers against tougher competition.
See, the thing with me was there were not a lot of times I can remember sitting watching a quarterback for an entire season where I just thought to myself, this guy is not playing fair competition to everyone else that he's going up against right now. He belongs in the NFL at this moment. Like watching some of the throws that he made, and the decision making he made shouldn't have happened in college for that level. I mean, like even in top D1 schools, the quarterback play from Joe Burrow was through the roof, and how quick he grasped everything.
And see, at the same time, though, when I was watching some of the film of him, I also took in the fact that there were a lot of passes that were pretty bad that were made up by really good wide receivers. Again, his top 2 wide receivers are going to be first round picks.
Yeah, no doubt he had a ton
and
of
then
talent.
I also noticed that in my mind, in a lot of the games that I watched, it was almost like, again, I didn't watch all the games, I didn't watch every single snap, but there were some times where on some of his big quote unquote highlight runs, it was my first read isn't there, I'm tucking and running now. And at the NFL level, you're expected to go through every single read. And then if it's not there, then maybe you can tuck and run.
Well,
that's going to be my thing
Yeah.
with him. When I watch stuff, is he made some great throws, but at the same time, he to me he didn't make a lot of progression reads. He had some ugly passes that turned into some amazing catches by his wide receivers.
Well, to me, it was like, in the championship game too, and in the entire playoff.
Yeah,
you get out there and it was like an automatic score. And he was a huge part of that.
Right. And again, that sample size, and maybe he learned from the. I'm just saying that's why I voted the way I did. Is in the regular season film that I saw, I was, it wasn't anything necessarily mind blowing to me. It was, I could see faults in what he was doing, and again, I'm not disregarding what he did, but let's also point out. The team that just won the national championship with him as quarterback, did you count how many guys got drafted out for that team?
Yeah, 14.
Yeah, which tied an all-time record.
Yeah.
So let's just remember that while, yes, Joe Burrow had a great year, they also had that team was stacked.
It was,
and those aren't even, that doesn't even include the guys who weren't even draft eligible this year.
It wasn't him solely leading a team to a team, and the coaching was fantastic too. So he was just put in a fantastic situation that he also took advantage of and had a historic season.
And that's why, like I said, with him going to Cincinnati, where he's going to have to be the guy more so. That's where I'm going to be curious to see if he can be, because that's the thing. That's when a guy like Tom Brady becomes the GOAT, is because did he necessarily have a whole bunch of Hall of Fame type players around him? No, but he elevated. He pulled a Michael Jordan. He elevated the game around those guys. That's what I'm going to be curious with Joe Burrow in Cincinnati, is he doesn't have, the type of talent that he had at LSU, but can he take his game to the next level to make everyone else around him better?
Yeah, I wouldn't ever try to get Bengals fans so hyped up and encouraged, like, hey, he's going to come in and get you guys a championship or even make the playoffs in his first year or whatever. I wouldn't say that, but I do think Rookie of the Year, I mean, it's a possibility. Yeah. I really think he's that good. Now, if he just comes out and has a stinker of a first year and can't get it going in the NFL for whatever reason, then I'm proved wrong. But I don't see that happening.
Because that's why I think, as much as people talk about the players that Patrick Mahomes has around him on defense, Damian Williams. Let's just bring up Damian Williams.
Yeah.
You know where he was drafted? He wasn't.
He was one of the better undrafted free agent stories after last year.
He was undrafted, undrafted player, and we had an argument on this station of how he should have been the Super Bowl MVP. Mm-hmm. That's to me how good Patrick Mahomes is. While he's a great talent, he's one of those guys who makes everyone around him better.
And that's why we love, at least I do, love the pick that they made with Edwards-Helaire, because it's going to be the same situation.
Yeah, he's got talent, and what Patrick can do with him is going to be amazing.
It's contagious.
Yeah, so that again, that's what I want to see from Burrow before I can really say, okay, he's going to be the in this next wave of elite quarterbacks for the next 10 years.
I get that, and again, I'll say this real quick before we give our weather, is that I'm really happy too that the division he's in now. It's not all of a sudden. I mean, he's getting to play against Lamar Jackson. He's going to get to play against Baker Mayfield and Ben Roethlisberger. I mean,
he's gonna have to win some games.
He's gonna have to win those games. That's solid right there, really. Yeah. I mean, you talk about some good competition, and especially if Big Ben comes back and tears it up, maybe, and Lamar has just as good of a year as last year. You're playing against the league MVP right now. I mean, it's really going to be. He'll be tested early. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Let's look at our weather real quick. I know that we have a severe thunderstorm watch right now.
No,
in
warning.
effect. Warning.
We're
warning
warning
right now. We're in a
Payne
warning.
County, in
In
Stillwater.
Payne County now.
Until 5 o'clock.
Okay, until
so for
5.
the next 30 minutes,
Yep.
it's starting to. Looking at the radar, it's there's a pretty good little line that's popped up. I think it was just south of Ponca. Let me pull. Yeah, popped up between Ponca and Stillwater. Right now, it's kind of. It looks like part of it's actually just to the just west of Perry as well.
Okay.
So if, like for my wife who's driving back to Perry right now, if she gets there quick enough, she should be fine. But over the next 30 minutes, it's looking like it's starting to start kind of building up. Again, nothing as far as tornadoes. Again, nothing tornado-wise right now, but we are under a severe thunderstorm warning here in Stillwater for the next 30 minutes as of the last warning that was just released. And again, things are just starting to pop up here in Oklahoma. Up in Kansas, there's a lot of red on this line, but we're just now starting to get the tail end of it.
And the watch is in effect until 11 o'clock for, I know, at least all 32 counties in central Oklahoma and I'm pretty much everywhere in Oklahoma, at least in this area. So that's right now sitting until 11 o'clock. So again, just make sure you stay tuned and to your local news outlets as well as us, and then keep an eye on the skies. Just use common sense. You know what to do out there in Oklahoma. All right, when we come back, we're going to see, I'm interested to see where you think Justin Herbert is going to succeed in the NFL. We'll talk about that, as well as, hey, Cam Newton is still out there. I think he's going to find a team. I'll tell you where he's going to go. That's next on the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network.
But if you had this life, you'd understand. Everything's a lot of up and down. But I ain't gonna let it get me down. Nah.
The Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Jason Elmquist. Tuesday afternoon, 105.1, Triple Play Sports Radio app. Regarding the NFL, let me first bring up, because I think, and it was interesting that they had a report today, the Chargers said what everybody knew. This wasn't news to me. They talked to the Los Angeles Chargers GM. They said, yeah, hey, if Tua was there, we would have grabbed Tua, but Justin Herbert was there, so we grabbed Justin Herbert. Like, yeah, really.
If I'm Herbert, I'm like, thanks, guys.
You were saying that too. Herbert's like,
you gotta love that confidence you have in me.
But also, I think he has to understand that. I mean,
you don't, and again,
come on.
As Gandhi would say, kids are snowflakes these days. And as a GM, you have to understand that the mental capacity that some of these guys have can be pretty fragile. And by basically coming out and saying that, we actually wanted this other guy, but we had to settle for him. I mean, that's literally what you say. And I know some people brush it off in sports because, whatever. It's like, but imagine that. Imagine being at work and somebody told you, and I can say this because it happened to me. Oh, you got the job, but had this other guy been available, 2 weeks ago, we would have hired him instead.
Right. I mean, it's like, it sucks. It does.
I actually had that happen to me.
Yeah. It probably doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. You want a strong-minded quarterback. So maybe was this
or you want a competent GM who, as you've been saying for the past 2 weeks, how do these coaches and GMs and owners not have the common sense to just not say stupid stuff?
It's really unbelievable, isn't it?
And this is one of them.
It just goes on and on and on, and we see something new every single day.
Justin, isn't this the same GM that said, Tyrod Taylor's our quarterback?
Yeah, which I said, then that's what made me first go. As soon as he said that, I said, well, they're getting a quarterback in the NFL draft, and they did. So Justin Herbert falls to the Los Angeles Chargers, who, number one, got to fill a stadium. That they can't do it. The new franchise and the new look has not worked yet.
I hope for just Chargers games, they pull a Baylor and pull out a tarp when they can't fill half the stadium.
Just like what they used to do at the athletic stadium
with the Raiders. For the Raiders games.
Hilarious.
Yeah,
that'd be great. They might have to. And you know what else too? When you look at the Chargers, I have to give them credit. The new uniforms they laid out, those are pretty slick. I like them. Out of all those,
here's my thing. They're the same ones. We've seen them. Like, people are freaking out. I'm like, these are the same, same color schemes and everything. That
you know why they
years.
freaked out, though? Because we saw all these garbage uniforms being put out by teams, and the Chargers finally got one right here. So everyone's like,
but they've had those. They've had the powder blues for years.
Yeah.
They've had, like, literally what they showcase is nothing new.
No, people are
freaking
little
out
tweaks.
because I think people are freaking out because there's nothing else in sports to talk about.
That's true. I mean,
so it's like, oh my god, these uniforms are amazing. And I'm sitting there. I'm like, I've seen these uniforms for the past several years.
Yeah,
like, give me something different, because I actually saw a Instagram rendition rendering of a Chiefs helmet where it was all red, but the face mask and then the white part of the arrowhead, they turned yellow. I'm like, that's kind of cool. That's something different. That'd be something to get hyped about. But it's like, if the Chiefs literally came out and showcased a new uniform and it was the exact same color scheme of every one that they've had for the past 5 years, would I get hyped? No. I've seen these.
But doesn't it also, I don't know, kind of show you that a little less tweaking just to things like that is all it takes? I mean, the Chargers didn't
or it also shows how little people actually pay attention to what uniforms the team already has.
I mean, I think the view of what they look like now just looks a little sleeker, looks slick to me. It looks like, okay, this is actually, it's subtle, it's nothing too flashy, and I'll give them credit. I like it, and then, it's not a huge change, but compared to some of these other uniforms and logos, LA Rams, it's a lot better. Justin Herbert will be rocking one of those new uniforms. The question is, ultimately, is there going to be this crazy offseason battle between Tyrod Taylor and Justin Herbert, or does Tyrod Taylor have this job locked up to at least start week 1?
I think it depends on how much Herbert showcases during training camp.
Is he going to have like a crazy training camp?
Well, and that's the interesting thing, because the way my brain kind of processed your question that you sent to me of what we were going to talk about with the quarterbacks, I almost took of a how are they going to handle not having a typical offseason. All these rookie quarterbacks in previous years have had OTAs. They've had rookie training camps. They've had an entire training camp. We don't know when and what they're going to get.
And the Saints already announced they're nixing their entire offseason.
Yeah.
That would be the worst case scenario for the Chargers, because it is one of the spots where I think a true quarterback battle is going to take place.
Oh, yeah.
I don't buy the whole Tyrod Taylor's our guy. I never did.
No,
and that's why they grabbed Herbert right now, because if he shows in the offseason and if they get some preseason games, all that, when he's in there and he's just dominating, for instance, he's going to be their guy.
I think they almost have to go with Herbert, because, again, you talked about you got to get butts in the seats. Do you really think Tyrod Taylor's going to bring a fan base?
No, I said that before. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Why would it? He's nothing special. And some people brought up, but he was in the playoffs that one time. Remember Tyrod? Hey, a lot of guys have been in the playoffs that one time, okay?
Yeah.
He's had as many playoff appearances as Odell Beckham Jr. You don't see me freaking out about it.
Yeah.
Tyrod Taylor, not that good. And now, here's the thing. When you pair it up, though, Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler, Hunter Henry, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. On the defensive side, you got Bosa. I lost the other guy's name now, but there's a couple others that are really good. That's dangerous to me.
Not Skandrick. But they are a good veteran quarterback away from being a contender in the West. And again, that's the thing.
Veteran quarterback or quarterback? Because I think they're a good quarterback.
If he turns into the next wave of good quarterbacks, then maybe. Mm-hmm. But I think it's still going to take a couple years for him to adjust, kind of like Patrick Mahomes, because that's the thing we got to keep in mind is Patrick Mahomes had an entire year behind Alex Smith, and then he had a year of taking some lumps of losing to the Patriots because of Dee Ford before he won a Super Bowl.
But he learned plenty from Alex Smith.
Right?
Now, how much could Justin Herbert learn from Tyrod Taylor?
Not a thing.
Yeah, that's
not
the
a thing.
Because
he can learn how to hold a clipboard.
Yeah, and I saw again, people that are Chiefs fans know Patrick Mahomes' first year in the league was just as important as anybody's ever. I mean, he sat there behind Alex Smith, and you talk about learning. That's why people, I think, were excited originally when they heard about Jordan Love. Oh, my gosh, he's going to sit behind Aaron Rodgers. The knowledge he's going to have is going to be fantastic.
But it depends on the approach of your quarterback.
Yeah, which is why
Alex Smith was the perfect character.
took it in stride.
Ben Roethlisberger, when they drafted Mason Rudolph, took the approach of, why are we wasting it on a quarterback when we need help to win a Super Bowl, blah, blah, blah. If that's Rodgers' approach, which I think is, what is Love going to gain from this?
Yeah, I know.
I don't know if he's going to gain much.
I don't think he has a very good chance of really succeeding as much as Mahomes did. Now, we all know people are going to be like, you're talking about Mahomes. His talent is through the roof. He's unlike anybody else. Yeah, that's true as well. But Alex Smith, and I saw that tweet earlier today. They were talking about that documentary or that little episode coming out about his leg surgery, which, by the way, 17 surgeries is all it took to get his leg back and then save it. He paved the way for Patrick Mahomes to come over and take over a franchise, and a ton of credit goes to Alex Smith, and Mahomes has said that for Mahomes' success. So let's look at the weather again real quick.
Thunderstorm warning, again, still in effect till 5. They've included now reports or possibility of golf ball size hail, 60 mile per hour winds. And from last time we talked, what was looking like just kind of a small thing, it has blown up just to the west of us. Again, nothing serious in regards to tornadoes, but in regards to the severity of winds, hail, damage to vehicles and housing, siding, animals outdoors, get them inside right now because, again, there's potential of golf ball size hail with this storm right now, and it is blown up. I just got a text from my wife. She got to Perry just before it moved in, and she said it is an absolute monsoon in Perry. And looking at the radar where we live in Perry, it's not even the brunt of the red part of the cluster that's going between here and Stillwater, Perry and Stillwater. So
I just got the update too. Just the severe thunderstorm warning extended now to 5:15 p.m. So that's 30 minutes away. It looks like. It looks like right now there might be some signs of sprinkle in Stillwater, but it looks like Morrison's about to get a good bit of rain. Again, if you're driving on the highway right now, was that the I-35? If you're between, Perry and the Stillwater exit is completely getting a downpour right now. If you're on 51 between 35 and Stillwater, it's going to be coming in right along that. Again, threat of 60 mile per hour winds, golf ball size hail moving into the Stillwater area right now. But again, no reports, no rotation, nothing tornado wise. All of it right now is just severe thunderstorm warning, and obviously it is going to hit us within the next 30 minutes. It's just the severity of the hail and the wind that we're going to get with it. Yep. Just take precautions and everybody stay safe out there. As he mentioned, you might move your cars in the garage if you can, if possible, or under some type of shelter, as well as get your pets inside if they're out as well. And of course, you stay inside, all of our listeners. We'll be right back with the final topic here on the Afternoon Sports Drive. I'm going to tell Jason where Cam Newton will end up, because he will find a team. That's next on the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network, wrapping things up here. Patrick Wheeler with you. I told Jason to go on and get on out of here. He has to get back to Perry, so let him go out of here a little early, try to beat some of the storms that are forming around this area. Again, Payne County is under severe thunderstorm warning until 5:15. There are storms that have the possibility of golf ball size hail and 60 mile an hour winds. And there's been no reported tornadoes, anything like that at the moment, but just a good reminder to go ahead and take precautions anyways. We'll wrap it up here with this on the Afternoon Sports Drive. I mentioned I would ask or tell Jason, actually. I wasn't going to ask him. I was going to tell him where Cam Newton's going to end up in the NFL. Still sitting as a free agent. He's the number one guy out there right now. Jameis Winston reportedly going to be going to the New Orleans Saints as their new backup. That's not official, but it looks like that's going to happen. So you have Cam Newton sitting out there. Where the heck's he going to go? Did the New England Patriots decide not to grab a quarterback in this draft because they know Cam Newton's going to be joining them? Is that what we're going to find out? Because I think it is. I could see Cam Newton, the New England Patriots. This guy is a guy that Bill Belichick loves. He said it before. Think about him in that system. A guy that could run around, get out of the pocket, make things happen. Running back still in that franchise that can catch the ball. He'd have to work with those wide receivers, though. That would be the downside to all this. Can Cam work with all those wide receivers that aren't top wide receivers in New England? Now, would he gel with Julian Edelman? Possibly. But we have to remember, Bill Belichick's still there, everybody. He does pretty well with quarterbacks. He's proven that time and time again. Why not be the guy that brings Cam Newton back? Brings him back from the depths. Because Cam has been there for a while now, and he's not going to be sitting on that free agency board for much longer. I truly believe that. And when he does get an opportunity, he's going to take the most out of it and say, hey, look, I still had it. To everybody that went out and got a quarterback and left me out here, still had it. It'll be interesting to see, especially with the Chargers. I thought that is where he would end up, and what do you know? They go out and draft a quarterback. Later on down the season, do they look and say, look what we might have had if Cam Newton, he's over there killing in New England. We're stuck here with Justin Herbert, who all of a sudden can't figure it out. I don't know. But I can see Cam in a New England uniform. Do I have to speak that into existence? And if that happens, how much more competitive do they become now without Tom Brady? I mean, come on. Jarrett Stidham or Cam Newton. Take your pick. Really? I mean, who are you going to choose? I'm taking Cam every time. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. You sign him to a year. If it doesn't work out, you go back in the draft. And then Belichick you trust. But I really believe Cam Newton has that opportunity. He's going to find a team. And why not New England? I say go for it. Go for it, Patriots fans. Get after it. I like it. Speaking of, real quick here. Pretty funny story real quick. Tom Brady. We all know how he walked into a different house in Tampa Bay trying to find his coach's house and Byron Leftwich's house to get the playbook for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now there's reports out that NFL teams wanted to look into it and say, hey, did he break the rules that the NFL has in place right now for no contact with coaches? Everybody wants to find Tom Brady breaking the rules. Even now, brand new team, the NFL is jumping on it. Can we make this happen? Come on, Roger Goodell. We know you love to suspend Tom Brady. Let's do it again. Oh, man. Brady's going to show them. He is going to show them this year that he's unfazed. Again, before I sign off, Payne County sitting right now in a severe thunderstorm warning until 5:15. Recommendations include moving those cars under some shelter, possible hail, getting the pets inside, make sure you're inside. Stay tuned to your local news, as well as watch the skies. They are all around the storms right now in Oklahoma. So be sure to pay attention to that. As it looks like, let's see, for the last update again was still sitting at 5:15, which we're coming on here in about 15 minutes for that warning to expire. So take precautions and stay safe out there. This has been the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. For Jason Elmquist, I'm Patrick Wheeler.